joined us for another Lipedema interview. And I have a friend, Nita Cluis from Whole and Balanced Living, and she has been following my guest today and said, you have got to interview her. So Katie, and we're not going to use your last name because it's not your choice to do that online, but Katie, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I want to first start with the fact that you are so inspirational to the lipedema community. And so thank you for using the lemons and making lemonade from it and encouraging others. What made you decide to do that?
Really, it was, well, first of all, thank you for saying that. I wanted to pay it forward, to be honest. I wouldn't have found my own diagnosis if it wasn't for the women before me who were brave enough to share their journey first. So I felt that I sort of owed it, to those women before me to pay it forward. So sharing my journey and my vulnerability and opening up, I didn't expect it to be such a healing journey for myself, but it really has become that. I didn't expect to meet such wonderful women and connect with them along the way like I have. But really, I did so because I wanted to help, even if I could help just one person, the way that the other women had helped me. That's what made me start my page.
So Katie, how did you finally get your lipedema diagnosis?
So I've had symptoms of lipedema, much like many other women probably watching this will relate to, since I was a young kid. Probably 10, 11 years old is when it kind of got the worst. Puberty hit. I started experiencing, the typical symptoms, the bruising, the pain, the tenderness in the legs. That started earlier, but by puberty, it really got bad. And the weight just started kind of piling on, despite the fact that I was active and doing everything I could. My mom and I went to the doctor, and the doctor kept saying, just lose weight. And that started the typical diet culture. We tried everything over the years, and doctors just kept saying diet, 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 and nothing was working. And we did the yo-yo dieting thing where I would lose successfully 100 pounds and gain back 120 if I just veered off. The only diets that diets.
No, I just lost your audio there. So the only diets that helped were what?
Ketosis diets. So where I was on a, very strict calorie limited diet, and I was in ketosis, but I'm talking like 500-600 calories a day, doctor supervised. These were very, very strict. And I would lose about 100 pounds because I was overweight by this point. But then if I would veer off just in the slightest, I would gain all the way back plus some. And I had done this by age 16 about 3 times. And so by this point, I was desperate for answers. I knew in my heart, I knew inside something wasn't right. My mom believed something wasn't right, but doctors kept saying, just diet. So by 18, that's when we turned to weight loss surgery. I had the lap band at 18 years old, and that did not work for me. The moment I woke up from that surgery, we just knew something wasn't right. I could feel the sensation that something was around my throat.
Really?
Yeah, it was a choking sensation. Now, doctors and the surgeon kept saying, that feeling will go away. It's just swelling. But for 5 years, I had this symptom and that feeling that something wasn't right. And I was literally choking. I couldn't swallow solid foods for 5 years, not properly anyways. I would literally throw it back up. I would have excruciating pain. I would have attacks of pain, and I would have to go to the hospital, severe dehydration because I wasn't eating or drinking enough. It was a nightmare. I ended up having 5 or 6, I think it was 6 surgeries where they ended up rebanding me. And finally, ended up in the US at the Mayo Clinic because nobody in Canada could, figure out what was going on with the band. And
Okay,
the Mayo Clinic.
I cannot believe at such a young age how much you went through.
Yeah.
And when I think about the physical losing and gaining 100 pounds and then surgeries, what were you going through emotionally?
Emotionally, it was very traumatic, especially because the doctors here in Canada kept saying, there is nothing wrong with you. You need a psychiatrist. Like, there's literally nothing wrong. It's a diet problem. You're overeating. You must be binge eating. This isn't what it is. physically there's nothing going on. Even with the lap band issues, they kept saying, there's nothing wrong here. It's all in your head. And even it got to the point that my family were siding with the doctors because they're medical professionals. So they must be saying the truth and there must be something going on with you. And that was really difficult. You know, I was going through years of self-doubt where you start to believe what other people are saying when you know something's wrong and you start to doubt yourself. And I think that's the scariest thing, is you start to doubt your inner truth and your inner voice. So I think the biggest lesson I've learned over the years and over that journey is there's something inside of you that's screaming and saying something isn't right. Never doubt that. You need to follow that intuition. You need to keep fighting and you need to advocate for yourself, no matter how hard it is, no matter how many no's, no matter how many brick walls you keep hitting along the way. It doesn't matter how hard that is or who you're up against, whether it's family or a doctor or many doctors. You keep fighting for that answer.
You've quite a powerful voice, and it's come from your trials and tribulations, and you found your strength in all of this, and at a very young age as well. I'm so impressed. So you had the lap band surgery, you had it taken out, you had it put back in.
Yep.
What was the next step?
So finally at the Mayo Clinic, they saw one scan before I even came, and they said this thing has to come out. It's basically on your esophagus. We were not sure what Canada's saying, but we know something's not right. We believe you. So get over here. So by the time I got over there, they did extensive testing before even opening me up, and they found C. difficile. I had a bacteria in my intestines and stomach raging. So they took care of that before opening me up because they said that could have killed me had they done surgery without finding it. And then when they did actually do other tests, they found damage to my esophagus with scar tissue, damage to the lower sphincter valve. So I couldn't swallow properly from all the throwing up for 5 years because the food was getting lodged and stuck. I had scar tissue that had, narrowed the esophagus as well. So they had to get in there, operate and widen my esophagus. And then the actual stomach area, I had a hiatal hernia. They had to repair that. It was very large, required mesh. So they got that thing out. They fixed all the damage. And, they held my hand and they literally validated and said, this is not your fault. And it's a miracle that you're okay. And, your body did wonderful things fighting for you. And that just gave me all the feeling in the world that, you have to fight for yourself. And I wasn't crazy. And I think that kind of gave me the strength going forward to keep pushing.
So getting that sort of validation from the most respected medical community, the Mayo Clinic, to say, this is real, this is not your fault. Did family and friends come around and sort of realize, wow, we've been judging this situation?
Not so much, to be honest. It was more for me. I don't even know that I not necessarily got that much from everybody else, but it didn't matter because it was about me.
All right. So now you've got that validation, you've got that diagnosis. Where did it take you?
I didn't lose any more weight. I hadn't lost any more weight, but now I could swallow again and I could eat again. So now I still had a very negative relationship with food. I was afraid to eat. So when I actually could eat again, it took years. I'll be honest. It took years to sort of not be afraid to eat, mend my relationship with food. I had a successful pregnancy with my daughter after that. And I think that flared my health issues after that.
Because of another hormonal juncture.
Exactly.
Puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause. Oh my goodness. So while you had the blessing of having a beautiful daughter, there was a triggering event again.
Yes. So following the pregnancy, I had a couple years of also emotional things. I went through a divorce. So there was a lot of stress in my life. And that brought on more illness. So I went through a diagnosis after that. It took years to get there, but I had meningitis, a very, bad illness, going through that. And then that brought on a neurological diagnosis. And things were just kind of getting worse from there. I knew that things were progressing with my legs. And that's where I knew something was going on. After I got the neurological diagnosis, I was like, it's not just this. Something's really still going on with my legs. I kept going to the family doctor going, I'm eating well. I can't lose weight, but my legs are expanding at a crazy rate here. And I'm in so much pain. At that point, I could barely walk. I mean, I was bedridden. My back pain, not just my legs, but my back pain was so bad. I was going to chiropractors, massage therapy. I was trying laser therapy for my back. I tried osteopath. What else did I try? Chiropractor. I tried everything.
So
Nothing was working.
our viewers right now, I hope that you hear such hope, because this is a woman who was bedridden. This is a woman who had many, many, many surgeries. Many people would have given up, but here you are, beautiful you, talking to us today and sharing such spirit. You came through the other side. How did you do that?
I just kept fighting. I kept going, this can't be it. And my family doctor, she was giving me, I mean, beautiful lady, but, she said, you've had meningitis and you've got a neurological disease. And she would give me painkillers, narcotics. And she wanted to get me on a nerve medication as well. And she pretty much said, this is as good as it's going to get for you. And I refused to believe that. She put me on diuretics for my legs, for the swelling, which wasn't helping. I only took it for a month and I refused to keep going after that. So I said, no, that's it. And that's when I literally kept pushing to find something. And in the same time, I was going through more of an emotional, spiritual journey, I would say. And that's where I started to accept and start to love myself. I started to put behind and put down the emotional pain that I used to carry around with my body and with myself. So what I mean by that is I spent years putting myself down, being angry with my body for all of the things that were going wrong medically, for the weight, for, all these different medical things that kept happening. And I think the moment that I, started to heal, the moment I started to forgive my body, that's when I started to find hope. And that's what eventually led me to the lipedema diagnosis. And how I got there was by, putting my mind to, I'm not giving up. And I found online other women's stories on Instagram. And then I started looking up surgeons and I started just doing research. And for a year, I'm a research buff. I literally took a whole year of just researching different surgeons. What is lipedema? Is this a real condition? Because I'm even one of those people that's pretty skeptical. And finally, I was brave enough to call a couple different surgeons and make some consultations online. And it was my first consultation with Dr. Schwartz, the surgeon that I chose, Dr. Jaime Schwartz at Total Lipedema Care, who ended up the one that I went with.
All right, so let's talk about that and unpack it a little bit. One of my favorite people in the world, Pale Ginger Pear, is a huge fan of Dr. Schwartz, and he's been gracious that he's allowed us to interview him. And what was it about him that made you say yes on the inside? Because you're a believer in your intuition. So what
Absolutely.
was it?
I think it was the connection with him right away. I just had this intuition. But further to that, he was so intelligent. He was so well spoken. And I just had that gut feel that this is the one. Something was screaming, that this is the person. This is the person that's going to help you. I felt so comfortable. I felt so at ease. I felt like he understood as a person what I was going through and the journey that I had already experienced, and that he could guide me through healing. And it wasn't just about weight loss. It wasn't just about removing some lipedema from my body. It was about a true transformation, and it was about healing. And he truly, truly talked about the fact that these surgeries could help resolve other symptoms, such as brain fog, such as energy, renewed energy and renewed sense of being, and all of those things. And I have to say, I was skeptical, but that gave me hope. And that's what I needed to hear. I needed that hope because at 30, in my young 30s, I'm a little older than 30, but in my young 30s, I felt like I was approaching 80, before surgery. And I
Wow.
needed that. I needed energy. I needed to sleep well. I needed to be a better mom to my daughter. I needed to have that hope again. And he gave me that.
So I want to remind our audience, we're not giving any medical advice. Everybody's journey is different. We're not saying surgery is the route you should take. It's
Absolutely.
different for everyone. But if you are considering it, I think there's real wisdom in what Katie is saying, which is to interview different people to find the right fit for you. And you
That's right.
clearly found the right fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I did interview more than one. I felt like he was the first one and he was the right fit. And after talking to so many others, I knew, that he was the right one. So I ended up going back to that. But you're absolutely right. You do need to do your research, I think. I think that's really important.
So the first surgery, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What area did he focus on?
First surgery, he did the top of my thighs. I trusted his judgment. So what I wasn't expecting that. I was thinking he would go for the back of my calves first because, my calves were the biggest, or what I thought to be the biggest. But he said, no, your thighs are actually the biggest. Your calves are too, but your thighs need attention first. And a week later, he did the back of my calves. So I had two surgeries back to back within a week. And he said that was only if my body was healthy enough and could handle it.
Wow.
And what I thought was so crazy was I've had many surgeries now in my life. But waking up from his surgery, I felt absolutely amazing. I mean, I don't know if it's the general anesthesia or the Tiva anesthesia that he used. That was one of the reasons I chose him as well as a surgeon. I thought that was really cool that it wasn't general.
Okay, a lot of
Where
people don't understand what you just said. So that is a
Okay,
focused anesthesia?
yeah, it's called Tiva. So it's a anesthesia that's through intravenous. So he tries to use that whenever possible. And the whole, I guess, premise behind that is that your body can recover a lot faster. You can wake up without that haziness from general, and your body can also work out the toxins from that much, much faster because our lymphatics are already damaged. So his theory is, having Tiva is a lot better for people like us with lipedema. And I thought, that was huge. Surgeons who's actually thinking outside of the box. So
Mhm.
I've had so many surgeries, and the fact that I've had, general so many times, I thought I have to try this if possible. Like, that's amazing. And waking up from Tiva was unbelievable. I felt like it was a nap. I didn't think it was surgery at all.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
you had two surgeries, one right after the next,
Yep.
and then yet another.
Yes. So, and the two surgeries I had back to back, I have to say, I was literally walking around LA bandaged up with drains, sightseeing, and I was walking better than I have in probably 10 years, despite the fact I just had major surgery.
But what they took out was something
Yeah.
you've been carrying around with you a whole lifetime.
Yeah.
Even a record-breaking lipoma, I heard?
Yeah, the third surgery, he said he found this last surgery. He said he had found like what he said to be a record-breaking lipoma in my front lower legs. He said he had never removed something that big from that area before. And he held up his hands, and it was like two hands put together, like just a big thing.
And it makes me want to say, how can anybody in the medical community just say this is regular fat?
Yeah,
When you look at these nodules and you look at these fat pads and the lipomas, it's clear that something else is going on here.
absolutely.
So, what now?
Well, he ideally says that I still have lipedema in my arms, probably breast tissue as well, and legs. I could possibly use another one. It just depends on my thigh area. Maybe need a lift, but we said we would wait and see on that. It just depends. He likes to wait and see if the skin will retract. But it's not obviously a priority to do skin, right? The priority is to get as much as we can of the lipedema out. But for now, I'm healing because I've had a lot of surgery. And this last surgery he did stomach, he touched up on areas around my knees and around the hips, and he did low back a little bit, and he did the front of my lower legs. So he did a lot in one surgery. It was a 7-hour surgery. So it was like combining 2 surgeries in one or more.
Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah.
And you mentioned fibrosis. Let's talk fibrosis for a moment.
Yeah. So he said that the fibrosis in my first surgery or second surgery, sorry, in the back of my calves was extremely dense. And so some people have a little bit of fibrosis, some people have a lot. It all kind of depends. And mine were extremely fibrotic. And he took a small snippet video of that. And I guess that also translates to how much pain you have and, how dense everything is. And I don't know, much about it per se. I'm not a doctor again or a professional that way, but I do know that for sure contributed to how much pain I had. And I do have a little bit of unevenness where he removed some, and he even said that not the fibrosis, sorry, but where he removed the lipedema. And I know that he said it might look a little uneven there, and that's because of the lipedema that was removed from that fibrosis layer. And I'm fine with that. I mean, the fact that he could just get as much as he could out of there. I'm not chasing some cosmetic, perfect, smooth skin, I just, to this day, I can't believe that my legs are as light and as, I don't even know how to describe it, that they feel the way they do. I mean, I'm running upstairs now. I could barely lift my legs before. I remember.
Bedridden.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Now, we don't want to paint this rosy picture, because even though you had a great experience, you also had some challenges post-op. There was an infection.
That's right.
And that's a very real possibility when there is surgery.
Yeah. And I wanted to share that. I wanted to share, the ups and the downs and the honesty behind that, because there's a risk with surgery. And I was that, I don't know what that percentage is, but I was in that percentage where things can go wrong. And I wanted to share that honesty as well, because I think sometimes there's a rosy picture that's painted with things like surgeries and plastic surgeries and even lipedema surgery now, where people are showing sort of a highlight reel. And I wanted to show, that it sometimes is a rough time. And, things can go wrong. There can be complications, so that people are making informed decisions. I think a lot of people have fears about it growing back and things like that. For me, my fear was never so much the future and it growing back. I'm really happy just living in the now and just waiting to see, what the future brings and doing the best I can for today. But my fear was more so the surgery itself. You're taking a risk. But I think how I looked at it was not having surgery for me personally was scarier than not taking the risk. And when it came to the infection, yes, that was a little frightening. I'll admit it. And it was difficult. I had 1 week in hospital, and then several weeks on IV after that as outpatient. Wow. And then I had several weeks, actually a month and a half, going to wound care after that. For nurses to keep patching up my incision on my stomach, where I had a slow closing wound. So it was a long go, but now the infection's cleared and I'm doing well. But if someone would ask me, would you do it again? Absolutely, 100%. I would do it again and again and again.
Wow, it's quite an endorsement. I know people want to follow you. If they're not already following you, how can they find you on Instagram?
It's My Lipedema Awakening.
I love that. What a great title. How did you come to that handle on Instagram?
Thank you. It used to be My Lipedema Fight, but I actually changed that. I made a conscious decision to change it. And the reason for that is I believe that if you're asking for a fight, if you're consciously saying, I'm fighting this illness, I think you're telling the universe, you're telling yourself subconsciously or consciously that you're fighting something, that you're constantly at war with yourself. And so I wanted to make a conscious effort with myself to say, no, I'm no longer at war with myself, with my body, with this illness. I'm accepting this. It doesn't mean that I'm not actively trying to make my life better or that I'm wanting change, because I do. But I'm okay with it. I've accepted that this is what it is, and I can consciously work toward a better tomorrow. So I've changed my name to reflect that. It's an awakening, so to speak.
I got goosebumps with that. And it's clear that you're attracting a new and better life by the very energy that you're projecting. I'm a
Thank you.
believer in that big time. And you believe in the mind body connection. And I think reframing it as not a fight, I'm not fighting with my body anymore. I'm not fighting with myself anymore, but I'm embracing it as an awakening. It's a great message.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think, for anyone watching, surgery doesn't need to be your answer. I think conservative treatments can be wonderful. I know I went the surgery route. And even if I couldn't get any surgery anymore, I still have plenty of lipedema. I'm here at, I don't know, 256 pounds. I'm still, plus size and proud. Um, and I have plenty of lipedema still here, but I practice conservative methods every day, dry brushing and compression and anti-inflammatory diet, and I'm doing everything I can, and I believe those things really do work. And I didn't do them my whole life because I didn't know about the condition, and I didn't know that those things could be great tools. So I think we all have to try, or be willing to try, new things and see what works for us.
Well, I can see why you've been successful and why your path looks so bright. I know that there's a lot of people out there saying, how in the world could you afford all those surgeries? Because this is not generally something that insurance covers.
No, yeah, it's not. I've taken out loans just like everybody, or many people, I should say. I can't speak on everybody in their situation, but no, here in Canada, it's not covered with insurance. I've traveled out of country to the US now for surgery. So unfortunately here, it's not covered, and we don't have many specialists here that recognize the surgery as something, that's covered, or that, is even a medical procedure. We have, I think, one surgeon here in Toronto who says they do lipedema, but with very little lipedema experience, and they consider it a cosmetic procedure. I did talk to them, and they're not people that I would trust. I don't want to name names, but they're
No,
not
I
people I
get
would
you.
trust to treat the condition.
I get you. And there is, taking care of you, first valuing yourself,
Yeah,
loving yourself enough to say, I'm going to do what it takes,
yeah.
and so you have, and good for you. I don't want to take up any more of your time, except I could probably talk to you all day long because you're just delightful and inspiring. For someone out there who may be bedridden, who may be depressed, who maybe family and friends have turned against them and are judging them as, oh, just diet and exercise. What would you say to the viewer out there today to encourage them?
I would say keep fighting. Try not to get emotional right now, but I've been there, and I really don't want to cry, but I know what you're going through, and you just have to keep fighting. Really, really, my heart's with you. And don't give up. Whatever it is, don't give up. And you're not alone. Reach out. I think the most beautiful thing about a journey like this, and believe me, I'm totally authentic, um, is you're not alone. And I think that's the most sorry, the most
Please
heartfelt thing I could
don't
say.
apologize for being so touched emotionally by this. It shows your authenticity. It shows how much you care, and it's going to affect people for good. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to endorse you. It's okay, because I'm sort of teary-eyed too. So go for it.
Yeah, I just remember being on that side, wondering how I'd make it another day. And so I think, for anybody watching who feels like that, just know that tomorrow will come, and you have to keep pushing. You do, because advocating for yourself, pushing for yourself, there is another day. And I think the more you push for yourself, the harder, the easier it gets, and there are people who understand where you've been, and there are people who can help you and who are willing to talk to you, and I'm one of those people. If you ever want to talk, I'm there, and I'll gladly talk to you. If you're having a bad day and you just need to say hi, I'm there.
I'm really glad that you took time to talk to us today. Katie, You are amazing and special. And let's continue this conversation. I applaud you and I'm cheering you on all the way. You're beautiful inside
Thank
and
you.
out.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And I'm so glad you all tuned into this edition of the Lipedema channel. If you know someone with an inspiring story in their lipedema journey, send them my way. Shoot me an email, bviola@medsoulsupplier.com. I'd love to talk to them. And thank you again. Heart bows to you, Katie. You have a beautiful rest of the day.
Thank you.